by that grotesque creature in the corner.
What is that?
I don't know, it was donated to the house by a bishop or something.
That's quite different to all the other stuff in there, isn't it? I don't know if you remember when I came to Chicago and spent
Yes,
a couple
I
of
do.
days.
Yeah, I do.
I remember sitting with you and I asked you the question, what needs to be done? And that was what was driving me at the time. And I just wanted to start by asking you the same question again now. When you look around you, what is it that you think needs to be done in this world?
Well, there's so much that needs to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, the world right now is a total mess. I don't think I've ever known it quite as bad, with the violence in so many parts of the world, the threat of Ebola, the disconnect with nature of all our young people around the world.
But when it comes down to it, who is responsible for doing change?
Only the people.
Only the people.
We can only do it. We can only do it through, I believe, through changing people's buying behaviour, changing their attitude, creating a critical mass of young people who understand we need money to live, but it goes wrong when we live for money in and of itself. And there's nothing wrong with making lots and lots and lots of money. In fact, it's great if you do the right things with it, like giving some to me.
Well, I was just talking with Mary about actually the scale now in the UK. I think you're working with 1 million young children in the UK alone.
Children, not necessarily young. Roots and Shoots is preschool all the way through university, and university students play a major role.
Right. And so a million young people in the UK, and I think she said there's only a couple of people running out of, their homes basically in the UK, which is absolutely phenomenal, really.
But it's a shame, because we should have more than 1 million to really change the attitude that we have to change.
What about on an individual level? When you're talking with someone on an individual basis, a child, a young person, what is it that you find that they have to overcome in order to get excited about the things you talk about?
Some of them, I think, never will. I think they've been brought up, so it's going to take something sort of shock to get them out of their rut, which is very sad. But usually in a one-on-one, I can go quite a long way towards getting them to at least start thinking about how they are, even if it doesn't immediately change. And I do know that I've heard back from people saying, you actually did really change the way I thought.
Do you think that's the first step then, is sort of, whether it's individually or through some kind of a system, it's causing people to actually take a second to reflect and consider the way they are acting?
I think so. I think that's very important. Some people it's instant, but very often it's people thinking about how they've been living and looking at it in a new way and thinking, oh dear.
Yeah. One of the things that I really took away from our time together, one was about the holistic thinking, and looking at the environment, community and animals all together. You can't look at them individually, you have to look at them together.
Yep.
And I assume that's something that you still believe in very strongly.
More and more.
Yeah, really?
I mean, well, yes, because you see the effects of one on the other more clearly now with climate change and things like that.
And the other thing was, you referred to the Native Americans who were making decisions based on 7 generations impact. And that absolutely blew my mind, because that couldn't be more countercultural to this instant world, instant gratification. How do you outwork that thinking in your life or in your works?
In my own life, well, I work it into every single lecture, simply not going the whole 7 generations, because people wouldn't even be able to think that way. But simply saying, we've lost the wisdom of thinking, how will this decision I make today affect my people, my descendants, in the future? And it seems that there's a disconnect between this amazing intellect that sent a rocket to Mars, to the red planet, with a little robot crawling out and taking photos. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And yet we're destroying the planet so fast, and so it seems there's a disconnect between the brain and the heart, the seat of love and compassion.
Through Roots and Shoots, all these young people around the world thousands of groups.
Yeah, there's
around
about
the
150,000 groups, and a group can be a whole school.
Yeah.
And it's now in 137 countries.
And this was way before Facebook and Twitter and social networks and all that kind of stuff. It's 20 years old now, isn't it?
Yes, 22 now, I think.
What? So I know it's about taking small actions for all three groups we've talked about.
Mm-hmm. Or big actions.
Yeah.
Can be big ones.
Does it matter whether it's big or small?
Well, obviously, in the long run, it's going to be more effective the bigger they are. But at the same time, millions of small actions taken with regard to one's ecological footprint or one's impact on society, millions of small ones like that is obviously going to lead to change.
A kid running through that program or a young person at university, if there was one thing that you personally would want them to have learned or captured for themselves through that process, what would that be?
Just realizing that every single day you live, you make an impact on the planet, and you have a choice as to what kind of impact you're going to make. Just that, because that's an answer to anybody, whatever their position in life, if they're rich or poor, if they're town or country.
I guess that comes back to the reflection point, the awareness point, the kind of the conversation where if you can do nothing else in a conversation with someone, it's just to make them aware of the choices they're already making,
yes,
and that the impact they are already having. And
yes.
I guess would you say it's a system of empowerment, trying to help them believe that their actions are powerful?
Absolutely.
They already are, but they don't necessarily know it.
That's absolutely, it's the key, empowerment of young people. And I've had, it was very moving in Nepal. We went up to basically the untouchable children who are forced to work in the brick mining kilns or whatever they are. And it's horrible. It's like being in the coal mines, really. And
these are children.
The children. And so when I gave a talk to them, it was translated, of course, and told them that every one of them mattered and had a role to play in life, the older ones cried.
Wow.
And I asked, why do you cry? It's because nobody ever told us we mattered before.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? If you don't believe you matter and your actions matter, then why does it?
Yeah, why does it matter? Equally, if you don't have any hope for the future, why bother?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is why I began Roots and Shoots, because I met so many young people around the world who had so little hope. They were either deeply depressed, even suicidal, or they were angry, even violent, and mostly just apathetic. What does it matter? It doesn't matter what we do.
How big an enemy is apathy?
One of the biggest.
What
One
else
of the biggest. Greed.
Greed? Any others that rank up there?
Not really. I suppose lack of consideration is another one. Lack of empathy, that goes up there.
Lack of empathy.
That's
a lot of other things are secondary, aren't they? They come from, they're symptomatic of those core issues.
It's against the giving culture, but so many people get this midlife crisis, and that's when they start wanting to give, because they then begin to reflect. I suppose things slow down to some extent, and I find that people do start thinking about their grandchildren and thinking about the footprint they've left behind, and thinking about how people will remember them.
Yeah.
And I think in a family situation, if you love your grandchildren, then that's probably important. So that's when they start kind of giving back, but it's too late.
Yeah. And you think this has to happen
from the beginning?
The habit, is it
Yes.
a culture, a habit? Is it?
It should be.
Yeah.
And that's something we want to ingrain in our youth. This the habit of giving your time in projects, but also, and it's very easy now with crowdsourcing and things, even if it's a little bit of money, if millions of people give a little bit of money, and then if all those millions of people see the result, they're going to feel proud, and that's going to encourage more giving. It gives you better feeling. I mean, it's easier.
Yeah.
Giving somebody something is great. It actually is, and I think even for these people who are just thinking in the wrong way, I think when they do make a gift, it makes them feel good.
Where does giving fit in this mix, if at all, and why?
Well, I think that giving is just an integral part of coming to answer some of what we were talking about, you know. A lack of empathy. If you're not empathetic, you're not going to give somebody something because you don't care.
Yeah.
You know, so it should fit in to making a difference every day in any way that you can.
If you are fostering a culture of empathy and avoiding, you know, a culture that doesn't celebrate greed, and a culture that is empowered, then maybe one of the products of a healthy culture of that would lead to people giving.
It would.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would, and it does. You know, it's like I say, when people start reflecting, they do start giving.
So there's a need for people to give to charity. There's also, in my mind, a need for people to give because of the effect that it has on them in their own
That's what
psyche.
I mean. It makes you feel good.
Feel good, and also I guess every time you, and I'm only thinking about this now on the spot, but every time you give, I think you are kind of sticking a middle finger up to the greed machine, because you are sort of saying, no, I'm not on this machine of getting more and more. And there probably is a sense of control in that, you know, a sense of I am my own person, you know.
But you see, you come back here to what I said right at the beginning, you know, that making money is fine, making lots of money is great if you do the right thing with it. But how often do we see that these huge corporations, these very wealthy individuals, what do they spend their money on? Lobbying. And it's just to get some political end or some business end, and it leads to corruption. And personally, I think it is corrupt. I think it's totally corrupt for a big, successful corporation to put lots and lots of money into somebody's political campaign. I think that's corrupt.
What is the thing that makes you angriest?
Oh, I don't know, really.
Do you get angry these
Yeah,
days?
I get very angry sometimes. Some of the big corporations that are destroying the planet, they make me really angry.
I've become so aware of our human kind of frailty to be able to deliver sustainably against our values, you know, because of the way things are set up. And so I'm really interested in us entering into systems that help us to build better habits and behaviours. Do you see a lot of people out there that want to do good but don't know how?
Oh yes, that's part of the problem. And you know, another part of the problem is people who are a bit thoughtful and think about what's going on in the world. It's so depressing. And you keep hearing, you know, think globally, act locally, but if you think globally, you don't want to act locally. So Roots and Shoots is based on the whole opposite. Do something, roll up your sleeves, get out there with your friends, do these little things, see the difference it makes. And then, my goodness, there's kids same age as me in all these different countries, they're all doing the same. Wow, what a difference we're making. Energy.
Have you seen any of the kids that have come through it, let's say 15 years ago?
Yes, they all tell me. They say once Roots and Shoots, you're in it for life.
Yeah.
And you think differently.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think what you do is awesome. And like I said, your personal energy as well dumbfounds me. I still don't know, and I wish I had the same levels of energy, quite frankly.
I don't know where it comes from either, so it's just fortunate that, you know, my body hasn't given up on me yet.